In November 2024, the information space exploded over a commercial that lasted exactly half a minute. There was not a single hint of cars on the screen, no gleam of metal or sound of a powerful engine. Instead, viewers saw models of androgynous appearance dressed in hyperbolically bright, avant-garde outfits. They posed in abstract pink geometric locations, holding sledgehammers and paintbrushes, accompanied by the audacious slogan, "Copy nothing." In less than 2 days, this visual manifesto broke through the ceiling of algorithms, reaching a colossal audience of over 110 million users. However, this was not a triumph, but the beginning of an unprecedented reputational crisis. The public reaction was immediate and ruthless, and the general bewilderment was most aptly formulated by Elon Musk, who left a short but devastating question under the video. Do you sell cars? If someone had asked the company's management this question 5 months later, the only honest answer would have been a painful, barely. The statistics, which would later become public knowledge, would shock even the most cynical automotive market analysts. Less than 50 vehicles sold across the entire European continent in a single month. For comparison, a year earlier, in the same month, the figure was approaching 2,000 units. This is not just a story about a failed advertising campaign. It is a fundamental study of how phenomenal attention can transform into a toxic asset, and how a brand with a 102-year history, founded by Sir William Lyons, decided to bet its existence on zero, believing in a vision of the future that hadn't even begun to form. To understand the logic behind this marketing suicide, it is necessary to go back in time and look at the company's fundamental indicators on the eve of 2024. Jaguar found itself in a trap from which most corporations find no way out. On the outside, everything looked relatively stable. Factories were operating, cars were rolling off the assembly line, dealerships were welcoming clients. But the financial math was relentless. Car production was generating losses, or at best, balancing on the edge of statistical error. Then CEO Adrian Mardell, during a conversation with investors, was forced to admit a bitter truth. Jaguar's current model lineup was bringing the company profitability that approached absolute zero. The company was burning through colossal financial, intellectual, and production resources simply to stay in place, while competitors were rapidly building muscle. The depth of the abyss became obvious when looking at global sales dynamics. While in 2018, the brand sold over 180,000 cars worldwide, by the 2024 financial year, this figure had collapsed to a critical 67,000 units. The situation continued to deteriorate. In the first half of 2025, sales fell by another 40%. As a result, Jaguar's share in the total volume of its parent corporation, Jaguar Land Rover, JLR, shrank to a meager 8%. The contrast with its sister brand was striking. While Jaguar was sinking, Land Rover was demonstrating historic records of profitability. Just one model, the Defender SUV, found over 115,000 buyers, which was almost double the total sales of the entire Jaguar lineup. The conditions were absolutely identical. A shared parent company, the same global macroeconomic situation, access to the exact same technologies and production capacities, yet one brand was flourishing, generating super profits, while the other had turned into a financial burden. An internal audit yielded a disappointing result. Jaguar had definitively lost the battle in the mid-premium segment. The German Big Three, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audi, had completely monopolized this niche. Their products were more technologically advanced, their production cycles were cheaper due to economies of scale, and the brand power in this specific price segment left the British with no chance. Management faced an existential choice: continue the slow, humiliating agony, trying to snatch crumbs from the table of stronger competitors, or make a radical U-turn. A decision was made that entered corporate history under the name Reimagine. The strategy consisted of a complete capitulation in the mass premium market and a sharp transition into the ultra-luxury segment, a territory historically dominated by Bentley, Aston Martin, and Rolls-Royce. The math of ultra-luxury is fundamentally different. Cars costing from $130,000 are sold in much smaller numbers, but the margin on each unit sold is gigantic. The focus shifted from quantity to quality, from accessibility to absolute exclusivity. As stated in official announcements, the company decided to focus on creating value, prioritizing profitability over volumes. However, when a few months later the market would see statistics of a few dozen cars sold on the continent, it would become obvious. A plan that looked like a brilliant rescue on paper had turned into a disaster at the implementation stage. The foundation for this drama was laid back in 2021, when the brand first announced its transformation. The plan envisioned an unprecedented step. By the end of 2024, the production of all existing models was to be completely halted. The company planned to be reborn as an exclusively electric vehicle brand with an entirely new identity. Managing Director Rawdon Glover explained this logic as follows. In order to survive, the brand needed to reinvent itself in a completely different price category, as playing by the old rules would have led to its ultimate disappearance. Chief Creative Officer Gerry McGovern, the man whose genius was behind the commercial success of the Land Rover Defender and Range Rover Evoque during his 21-year career with the company, proposed a new design philosophy called exuberant modernism. What followed was something dubbed a firebreak within the company, a total and uncompromising shutdown of the assembly lines. By December 2024, the life cycle of every car bearing the Wildcat emblem was artificially cut short. The F-Type Sports Coupe, the XE and XF business sedans, the E-Pace crossovers, and even the electric firstborn, the I-Pace, everything was consigned to the dustbin of history. This move meant that dealerships around the world would be left with empty showrooms for over a year, while the company prepared 3 entirely new electric vehicles, slated for release no earlier than late 2026. The first sign of this was to be a 4-door GT-class Grand Tourer with an estimated price tag of $130,000 and a claimed range of over 750 kilometers. This was twice the cost of the brand's traditional sedans. But until 2026, the company had to exist in a state of clinical death, generating zero revenue from the sale of new cars and relying entirely on a financial IV drip from its parent structure, Tata Motors. Management's logic was ironclad in its radicalness. It is impossible to make a customer believe in the new, elitist essence of the brand if the remnants of its old, cheap past are still being sold in the adjacent showroom. To prepare the public for the premiere of the Type 00 concept car, scheduled for December 2024 during a massive art exhibition in Miami, the company launched that very viral rebranding in November. The next 48 hours became defining for the fate of the entire strategy. On November 18th, 2024, the brand committed an act of digital suicide. Its entire history on social media was deleted. Decades of posts, communication with fans, Le Mans victories, the legacy of the legendary E-Type, all of it vanished in a single click. The next day, the world saw the brand's new face. The famous leaping Jaguar logo, the Leaper, which had been a symbol of British luxury for almost a century, was removed from the forefront of communication. Its place was taken by a minimalist, sterile font logo, which bizarrely mixed uppercase and lowercase letters. Jaguar. The company's designers justified this as a striving for visual harmony. A bombardment of new slogans began. Delete ordinary, live vivid, break molds, and ultimately the main motto, copy nothing, which marketers dug up from the archives of the brand founders' quotes. And then came that same 30-second commercial. No cars, people with sledgehammers, pink landscapes. The resonance was tectonic. While Elon Musk asked his sarcastic questions, the video gathered over 160 million views across all platforms. The German publication Bild, sensing the mood of the audience, conducted a poll among its readers. The results were crushing. 93% of nearly 18,000 respondents called the new image creepy and having lost any connection to its automotive legacy. Political and media figures, including British politician Nigel Farage, publicly predicted the brand's rapid bankruptcy, noting that this was commercial suicide that the company fully deserved. The main paradox lay in the timing. The automaker released an ad without cars at the exact moment it critically needed to convince its audience to be patient and wait for new models for over a year. 2 weeks later, on December 2nd, 2024, at the prestigious Miami Art Week exhibition, the covers were finally taken off the Type 00 concept. The car was presented in two screaming shades, Miami Pink and London Blue. Its massive, clunky, geometric design was a radical departure from the flowing, feline lines for which the brand was famous. Social media erupted with a new wave of mockery. The car was compared to a toy vehicle for Barbie, a failed copy of the Tesla Cybertruck, and even to air conditioner grills. One commenter harshly summarized, "The zeros in the concept's name are the number of cars you will be able to sell. This is beyond ugly." The real test came 5 months later. April 2025 brought numbers that made the entire industry shudder. Data from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association showed that only a few dozen new cars of the brand were registered in the European region. Compared to the same period last year, when nearly 2,000 units were sold, the drop was an astronomical 97.5%. The company's official position was predictable and formally logical. Representatives stated that these numbers were a direct consequence of their conscious decision to halt the assembly lines, not a sign that the market had rejected the brand. The argument sounded convincing. You cannot sell what physically does not exist in warehouses. Lack of inventory equals lack of sales. But this situation gave rise to a much deeper strategic question. Did the transformation truly require such radical, destructive methods? The experience of competitors indisputably proved otherwise. While the British were burning bridges, the Bavarian concern BMW calmly continued to produce its classic 3 and 5 Series sedans with internal combustion engines, simultaneously bringing the innovative electric models of the I-line to the market. Their flexible architecture allowed customers to choose. The result? In the first quarter of 2025, Sales of the brand's electric vehicles soared by 32.4%. This approach worked because it left control in the hands of the consumer. Those who were ready for the plug bought electric cars. Conservatives continued to drive on gasoline without feeling betrayed or thrown to the side of history. Mercedes-Benz did the same, integrating its EQ electric technologies into the familiar E-Class and S-Class formats. Instead of killing their legacy, they retained customer loyalty by allowing them to stay in a familiar environment while the new technologies went through their maturation phase. Audi acted according to the same scenario. The A4 and A6 models peacefully coexisted in showrooms with the futuristic e-tron lineups, which provided the brand with over a 50% growth in electric car sales. The trend was glaring. A successful paradigm shift requires providing alternatives, not issuing ultimatums. True leaders respect existing connections with their audience while simultaneously building new ones. They offer customers a reliable bridge to transition into a new era rather than forcing them to jump off a cliff. The realization of the consequences of this step began to materialize very quickly. Dealerships across Europe and North America turned into empty hangars. The company announced a ruthless reduction of its dealer network in the U.S. Out of 122 full-fledged dealerships, only 20 so-called boutique locations remained. But this was just the beginning of the domino effect. In May 2025, the company abruptly severed ties with the advertising agency Accenture Song, despite the fact that the contract was signed until mid-2026. This very agency was an accomplice in creating the viral but destructive rebranding. 3 months after this tectonic shift, CEO Adrian Mardell, who had dedicated 35 years of his life to the company, announced his resignation. On November 17, 2025, his chair was taken by P.B. Balaji, the former chief financial officer of the parent company Tata Motors. This was a clear signal. The romance was over. Hard-nosed financiers were taking over. Exactly 2 weeks later, and right on the anniversary of the Scandalous presentation of the Type 00 concept in Miami, another landmark event occurred. On December 2, 2025, Chief Creative Officer Gerry McGovern's 21-year career at the company was abruptly cut short. He was fired with immediate effect. Industry sources rumored that the top executive was literally escorted out of the office by security. It was an inglorious finale for the man whose pencil had once drawn the corporation's most profitable models. His final work attracted colossal attention, but turned into a commercial vacuum. Tellingly, back in 2022, more than 24 of the company's designers had written him a collective letter begging him not to outsource the rebranding to Accenture Song, but to keep the development within the team. Their warnings proved prophetic. The industry press of that time was rife with depressing reports from dealerships. Dealers told identical stories. Loyal customers would come in to ask about new products, but they could be offered neither cars in stock nor the possibility of a test drive. Only glossy renders of concepts on tablet screens. Most buyers bluntly stated that they were not going to wait for years and were going to competitors. The company's management remained silent, refusing to comment on both McGovern's dismissal and the situation in the showrooms. A year after the launch of the new identity, the results looked like a combat casualty report. a 97.5% collapse in sales, a fired agency, a retired CEO, a chief designer shown the door. And all of this was happening against the backdrop of the parent company reporting a record profit of $2.5 billion for the 2025 financial year, solely thanks to the incredible success of Land Rover. The premium car market was feeling great. Competitors were getting richer. The problem was not the economy, nor a crisis in the industry. The problem lay exclusively in the strategy of one specific brand. A fundamental question arose. Where exactly did the architects of Reimagine take a wrong turn? As of December 2025, the brand was suspended in a state of limbo. Not a single new car is being sold. Factories are at a standstill. The first production electric car is promised to be shown no earlier than late 2026, meaning the gap in production will be more than 2 years. Optimists from the marketing department try to appeal to metrics. Website traffic increased by 110%, brand awareness jumped by 23%, and research shows that 20% more people now consider the brand to be more premium. But likes and views do not convert into currency. Sober analytics point to 3 monumental mistakes that led to the disaster. Mistake 1. Devaluing their own audience. The brand's communications stated in plain text to loyal customers that their tastes were a vestige of the past. The slogan, "Delete Ordinary," was not just a catchy phrase, it was a spit in the face of all those who had been buying these cars for decades. If you look at marketing textbooks, successful transformations look different. When Apple entered the phone market, Steve Jobs didn't call Mac users dinosaurs. When Porsche released the Cayenne SUV to save the company from bankruptcy, they didn't turn their backs on fans of the classic 911. True visionaries respect their roots while expanding horizons. They add new meanings rather than erasing old ones. Jaguar decided to destroy everything first, hoping to build something new on the ashes. Mistake 2. Attention without product backing. The company generated unprecedented hype. 160 million views is every marketer's dream. But in a segment where the average check exceeds $100,000, attention alone without trust is toxic. When Porsche was bringing the electric Taycan to market, they spent years taking journalists to test tracks, allowing them to experience the engineering excellence of the product. When Tesla launched, Elon Musk already had a proven track record of shattering skepticism with real technologies. The British, on the other hand, asked the public to take their word for it, showing only a pink concept of an abstract shape and promising a miracle in 24 months. No test drives, no independent expertise, no proof, just a mantra. Forget everything you knew, trust us, and wait 2 years. Mistake 3. Lack of an escape route. Halting all production, erasing history on social networks, insulting the customer base, and betting the future of a century-old company on models that do not physically exist yet, without having any plan B. This is an unprecedented level of risk. Former CEO Mardell justified this by saying that the old models weren't making money, and Tata Motors' deep pockets allowed them to finance such an experiment. But the presence of finances is not synonymous with strategic wisdom. The real question is not, can we afford this experiment, but what will we do if it fails? Management's answer was frightening in its simplicity. We'll see in 2026. Today we have a clear picture. Back in 2024, the brand was finding almost 2,000 buyers every month in Europe. Yes, the company had systemic problems. Profit margins were tending towards zero, its positions were weakening, and sales were falling. But almost 2,000 people every month were bringing their money to Jaguar showrooms, consciously ignoring offers from BMW, Mercedes, and Audi. By April 2025, this number had shrunk to a few dozen. The cars that perhaps will roll off the assembly line in late 2026 will be the ultimate judge in this story. They will show whether this shock therapy was a painful but necessary step toward revival, or simply an act of corporate vandalism that forever severed the connection with customers who might have followed the brand into a new era if given the chance. The lessons of this drama go far beyond the automotive industry. At the starting line, courage and recklessness often look like twins. Their true nature is revealed only at the finish line. True business courage lies in respecting the foundation on which you stand while building a new floor. It offers customers a safe bridge and allows them to cross to the other side at a pace comfortable for them. Recklessness burns the bridge before making sure there is solid ground on the other side at all. The British brand started a massive fire in November 2024. They will only find out if there is anywhere to land in late 2026. But the sales statistics hint all that's left for them is to desperately pray that there really is ground over there.